Well, I want to welcome people into what we hope is the first of many years of celebrating Women's History Month with a UNH Athletics Women's Alumni panel discussion. And as a reminder to those just jumping in now, please keep yourself on mute to begin with. And then there will be a time to ask questions. You can use the chat function if you're not comfortable jumping in to ask, but we just ask you to be mindful of the time of the panelists because we want to hear from them. And then later on, feel free to send any questions along. All right, let's meet the panelists for today's discussion. First, we have from the class of 2009, Julie O'Shaughnessy, played women's soccer for the Wildcats, earned a BA in political science from UNH, was a captain at UNH, member of the All-America East tournament team. She's completed 6 marathons so far, 4 Boston marathons, 2 New York marathons, and now is the head of strategy and operations for AWS Startup Business Development, also is the vice chair for the Ali Forney Center Board of Directors, and is a board member for the UNH Athletics Advisory Board from Manchester, New Hampshire, lives in New York, although I've been told her pandemic home that she'll get into is in Maine. Also, we have from the class of 2012, Jackie Mendez, track and field standout, earned a degree in kinesiology sport studies, then also a degree in psychology from UNH, earned a master's in both exercise and sports sciences and sports psychology at Ithaca. While at UNH, and she still has this record that she set during the 2011 season as the pentathlon record holder, was the team captain in 2011-12, won the Athletic Director's Award for Academic Excellence, came back to UNH in a coaching capacity, and in 2017 was the USTFCCCA Indoor Women's Coach of the Year. She moved from Durham, New Hampshire to Durham, North Carolina, where she is now an assistant coach for the men's and women's track and field program at Duke University, originally from Dayton, Maine. And then we have from the women's gymnastics team class of 1994, Nicole Mullins, while at UNH, won the Strength and Conditioning Athlete of the Year Award in 94, captained the Wildcats in the 93-94 season, was a Scholastic All-American 4 times between 91 and 94, also won the Barbara King Newman Scholar Athlete Award Scholarship in 93, was the ECAC Scholar Athlete of the Year in 1993. Team awards included Most Valuable Gymnast 1993, Most Inspirational Gymnast 1992, and 1991 she was the Most Improved Gymnast, went to nationals representing the Wildcats both as a sophomore and as a senior, and was inducted into the UNH Athletics Hall of Fame in 2012. Nicole earned a Bachelor of Science Exercise Science degree in 94, got her Master's in Exercise Physiology from Kent State in 1997, her Doctor of Philosophy in Exercise Physiology from Kent State in 2002, and now is a professor of exercise science at Youngstown State in Ohio. She's from Dixfield, Maine, but lives in Lake Milton, Ohio. So those are the esteemed panelists and the esteemed host. A member of the Wildcat program now is an assistant coach of the volleyball team, Ashley Tennant, a student athlete at the University of Rhode Island, has almost 15 years of coaching experience, men's and women's volleyball from Southern California, earned a kinesiology degree at URI in 2013, and a master's degree in coaching in athletic administration from Concordia University in Irvine, California. So with that, we know we're in great hands, and we'll pass it over to our host, Ashley Tennant.
Thank you, Murph. And already I just want to say thank you, panelists, for being here today. Really excited for this, and we've just created a lot of traction in the Committee on Mutual Respect, and we want to keep it going. So as it is Women's History Month, we want to talk about you as a woman and as your time as an athlete. And so let's be mindful of time and jump right in. And this question is going to be for all 3 of you. Nicole, let's start with you. What made you come to UNH? Nicole, you're going to want to unmute.
I got kind of a late start in gymnastics. I started when I was 8 years old, but I didn't join a private club till I was actually a freshman in high school. And I learned so much so fast when I got some good coaching and some in a real gym, so to speak. And so I was learning really rapidly, but I didn't have a clue about recruiting, and I didn't even ever think about a college scholarship until I got probably junior and senior year. And then I started looking around and was very fortunate that such a strong program was near home. I thought I was going to go to an Ivy League school, and I applied to, I got into Brown and Cornell and UPenn, but when I went to visit those schools, their gymnastics, and no offense to those schools, they've come a long way since then, but they couldn't compare to UNH in terms of skill level or the coaching or the facility. And so a big draw to UNH was that it did have strong academics, and I also joined the honors program, which made me feel better about that decision. And it was one of the best decisions of my life.
Awesome. And we'll be talking more about your gymnastics stuff while you're here. Julie, let's hop over to you. Why did you choose UNH?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. Hey, everyone. So soccer was definitely the #1 component for my decision-making. And the big difference was coach at the time. He really embodied that balance of family. And yes, we're here to work, but family came first. And especially with some personal family stuff that was going on for my family at the time, it was important for me to have access to seeing them and being able to have a coach who was empathetic and understand that family comes first and allowed me to miss practices when I needed to. So it was really that family culture that coach brought. I had never envisioned going to UNH. I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire. I was looking at schools out west and far away. And I am still thankful for the opportunity that I had attending UNH. And it's because of that balance that coach embodied.
Awesome. Jackie, why did you choose UNH?
So I chose UNH actually for a few reasons. So I remember sitting in my guidance counselor's office in high school and making a list of colleges that had Division I track and field, because I knew I wanted to compete at the Division I level. I wanted to be somewhere in the middle on that team. So I didn't want to be the best, but I didn't want to be the worst. So I made sure I did my research on the team as well. And because I knew I wanted to be a college coach, I was really drawn to the kinesiology program because it's, one of the best departments around. So, and I knew I could, get into coaching through that kind of a program. And then also just being on campus felt like home. I just loved everything about campus. I loved the feel of it. I just loved the way that it was set up, and it reminded me of my high school as well. So yeah, for a lot of reasons, but yeah, I'm obviously super happy with my choice.
Yeah, I think UNH is absolutely gorgeous. I know that we always talk about the fall, but I think fresh snow on campus is potentially the most beautiful time. And I chose UNH because when I played against them at Rhode Island, I was always very impressed with their volleyball program, and the coaching staff that actually was coaching at the time were the people that we now are in place of, and this is their office. So hopefully we're doing a good job for them. So next question is, what was your favorite experience at UNH? That can be athletics related. Obviously it also potentially isn't. But Julie, why don't we start with you on that?
Favorite experience. I think it's challenging just to choose one. I would say on the road travel with my team was probably my favorite. It allowed for bonding time away from campus, and you kind of had everything else that was happening. You could just leave it there, right? You knew you were coming back to it. But when you were on the road, no matter if it was, going to BU or getting on a plane and going out to Oregon, those times that you shared, whether it was talking about academics or talking about a personal life situation, talking about family, I think really allowed for the team to have that special time together away from the university. So definitely, and I mean, I can go into some specifics, but I'll chalk it up to our time away together as a team on the road.
Perfect. Jackie, what was your favorite memory, if you can count it to just one?
Yeah, that's hard. I would say probably the thing that sticks out the most to me was when I actually did get the school record in the pentathlon. I remember just after it was over, just standing there with Hop. And we were just so happy just because I finally had like the best day of my life, like athletically. And so that was really a great moment for me. But I think also just my teammates, I had some really great teammates, great people. We did a lot of things for each other. I actually just had a conversation with Kate Early, who's the school record holder in the heptathlon, so the outdoor version of what I do, and talking about her one season she did indoor track. And she came 1 point away from my school record. And I was a little bit injured that year and I wasn't able to compete with her, but I was with her actually for all the time she tried to get that record. And it was a good moment just as a teammate and as a person to do everything you can for your teammate to help her succeed, even if that meant I lose the record. If she was going to have a better day. So we actually just talked about that because she's just getting into high school coaching now. But like important life lessons like that, those are things that I'll take with me forever. Just, doing things for other people. And it's those experiences together with your teammate.
Awesome. Nicole, what was your favorite memory of UNH?
Answer this two ways. One, the favorite culminating memory was the fact that, we made nationals my senior year, and it was just kind of, it was perfect. I mean, we would have liked to have done a little better there, but it really was the culmination of everything of my 4 years. A little bit more of a broad answer though. I mean, I loved learning. I loved being in the gym. I loved the opportunity to continue improving, and I did improve all 4 years, and that came from great coaching and the great facility. And to build off what Julie said earlier, I mean, I love the fact that we had coaches that really cared about us. Bill and our trainer Dan, they really cared about us. They were like our family away from home, and they're lifelong friends. I talk to them, I Christmas cards and play golf with them, and that's really important. Since this is a talk which bridges on some gender equity stuff, I also have to say that I really valued having a strong, successful woman as a head coach. Gail was a head coach at a time when there were not many women head coaches, and she faced a lot of sexism, and she walked right through it with head held high. And I appreciate what she shared, and I appreciate how she stood up for us. And on that note, I also feel that Ed was a big part of their successful relationship, because Ed really had a lot of confidence in himself and had his own ego in check. For anyone not familiar, Gail was the head coach and Ed was the assistant coach. And, I think a lot of times when a man is in a subordinate position, if I may, they're often justifying or a little embarrassed about why they are where they are. And that alone speaks volumes about sexism. And I never sensed anything like that from Ed. They both had their roles. They divided those roles excellently. And I think that they just served as a great model of an excellent female-male coaching partnership. And I really value that. And I hope that, people really pick up on what they did there.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about coaches now. Julie, you had a male head coach and a female assistant during your time here at UNH. Nicole, you had a female head coach and a male assistant. And then Jackie, you had all male coaches, but with a grad female assistant. Is that correct? Was that for all 4 years, or was she only there for 2?
So there were 2 grad assistants, each there for 2 years. So 4 years I had one, but they were different, freshman and sophomore year, and then junior and senior year.
Okay. So as we talk about coaches, I had to put on my glasses so I can see. Let's talk about what it was like going into the offices, or when did you guys choose to utilize your coaches' offices? I know that is something that we kind of dove into when we met up last week. So Julie, let's start with you.
Yeah, so for me personally, I tried to keep that separation. When I needed to talk about personal stuff, I would do that with other leaders in the community. Sometimes that meant another coach. Sometimes that meant a professor. There are a couple that I won't name, but I spent a lot of time with them. I think with the coaches, I went to coach when we made mistakes, especially as a senior, speaking on behalf of my team. I had a lot of difficult conversations with coach, a lot of scary situations, no matter if you're, an 18, 19-year-old, or if you're a 45-year-old. We dealt with some pretty challenging issues my junior and senior year. And that entailed heavy conversations with both Coach Jackson and Coach Kelly at the time. They were there for us. They were there to get us what we needed as student athletes. But personally, I chose to keep that separation. I was there to play soccer. I was there to be a leader on the team. I was there to be for my team. And if I needed to let something out personally, I went outside of my coaches.
If you don't mind me asking, is that because you wanted to keep it separate, or was that kind of the relationship that you had chose to build? What kind of drew you to that decision?
Yeah, I think it's the relationship that I chose to build for myself. It's still how I am today in the workplace. I'm typically not going to go to my boss with issues. I'm going to go to another resource. It's what I decided. I needed that separation for myself.
Okay. Nicole, how did you utilize your coaches' offices, and what kind of relationship do you think you could say you had during that time?
I find this question a little challenging to answer because I don't really remember anything very remarkable. I guess I felt it was a very open door. And I don't remember any momentous, like I have to build up to talk to them, because I felt that I was very close to them. And if I had a problem, I would just talk, I just always felt very comfortable with my coaches, and we were friends. I mean, they had their commanding, their superiority, but I felt very comfortable with talking with them about most things.
Great. Jackie, what about you? How did you utilize your coaches' offices, if you did? And was it good? Was it bad? Was it personal? Was it professional? What was it?
Name me someone who hasn't been in Coach B's office. So I'll just start with that. Everybody's in his office all the time. Everybody walks through. I was in his office quite a bit. I had a independent study for track and field my senior year. So I was actually assigned to be there quite a bit. But I liked being there just to listen about track because I knew I was going to be a track coach. So, spare time before or after practice, I was in there listening and learning, and in there with my teammates, nothing ever personal in there. With the women's track office, I was really only in there if it was something serious. If there was something going on with a teammate, or maybe if it was something major going on with me, I was in there. So I didn't really get too personal with things. I didn't have my coaches like phone numbers. I didn't like call them or anything. So if I needed something, I'd just show up. And I think kind of that's the culture there now. And I think that's the expectation. And I've actually taken that culture with me everywhere I go, is that open door policy, couch of tears. It's always ready to go no matter where I am. So yeah, I mean, I used it. I wasn't there really for personal reasons though, but really just in Coach B's office, because everybody's in Coach B's office.
Yeah. I think my next thing about during your guys' time at UNH is the weight room. Talk to me about, you know, what that kind of experience was. I think we have some good stuff. Julie, you make me laugh, so I'm going to make you go actually last on your response. But Nicole, you were the strength and conditioning athlete of the year. So did you enjoy the weight room? Was it something you looked forward to? Was that award a goal of yours? You know, talk to us about that.
I didn't even know it was an award. I loved being in the weight room, and I felt very confident in the weight room, and I reflected on why, because I know a lot of people don't feel very confident in the weight room, or you know, in strength and conditioning. And I think it stems from my major goals always in sport, whatever I'm competing in today, or gymnastics, was always to improve my own skills. You know, I came in as a walk-on, so it was kind of ridiculous for me to compare myself initially with, you know, our elite scholarship athletes, and I just wanted to improve. And I always liked getting stronger, whether it was doing more pull-ups or more leg lifts or running faster or whatever it was. And now I know that we have some people with sports psych backgrounds listening in the room, and those of you who do know that that's called a mastery orientation, where you really work to get better at your skills. And it's kind of an attitude that is healthy for athletes, because you're not threatened by others, and it's not people with the other kind of orientation, the ego orientation. They always want to beat somebody else, or at least not do as poorly as those other people. And that's kind of an unhealthy attitude to have, because if you lose, it's like a threat to your ego. And so how do you develop these mastery orientations? Well, my parents and my coaches were always advocating, you know, just focus on you, just focus on what you can do and improve yourself. And the good thing is, if you improve yourself, chances are you do better against the competition too. So it works out well. But I guess I never felt like I was comparing myself to anybody else. And I just, when you get stronger and you see yourself getting stronger, that builds more confidence, and it makes you work harder. And it's just this kind of positive cycle. So, I mean, I do think there's a lesson in there for coaches and student athletes, because you can foster that type of orientation to always focus on, you know, performance related goals, on what you can do to improve. So I just was always trying to get stronger for myself, and I did, and it makes it more fun and less threatening, I guess, with all the social comparisons that people do, right?
Yep, absolutely. Jackie, talk to me a little bit about your speed suit and the weight room and everything.
Speed suit. Yeah, I was one of very few people that wore the speed suit, mainly because I like the length of the shorts, but you know, it also, I just felt way cooler wearing that. I feel like this is a loaded question. The weight room experience for me was always incredibly tense. There's always something going on that was really crazy. So we talked a little bit about you know, like my freshman year, we definitely lifted on a football card. So I got huge, ripped through my jeans in class. So I had to deal with that. Stopped wearing jeans altogether in college. And so, you know, that was tough, you know, having your coach, you know, go home before you even started lifting, because it was the end of the day. You know, so we just kind of dealt with that stuff, you know, getting thrown out because, you know, football's in spring season and they got to lift, so we got to get out. And going up the chain with that, you know, as I became a senior and as I became a captain, with knowing who to talk to and how to get that resolved as quickly as possible for my team. I will say junior and senior year, we had some GAs that were fantastic. It's not a shock to me that I got the school record junior year because of the strength coach that I had and how incredibly lean and strong that I was. I was super fit. You know, he did a great job with us, and, you know, as part of our training. And I thought that was really awesome. But, you know, usually it was really tense. You know, I was thrown out one time for being in the way, and I was lifting on a platform with my teammates and I singularly was thrown out. So it, you know, there were always just really tough times, a lot of outbursts, a lot of yelling, a lot of, you know, just, I don't know, people who go here know that. They know.
When you said that you had a GA, does that mean that you had a grad assistant always as your strength coach, or did you have one of the full-time strength coaches?
So we always had someone, a full-time coach overseeing the program.
Okay.
But junior and senior year, we had a GA who stayed with us when we were lifting. And he ended up writing our lifting cards, and they were totally different. I think he had a baseball background. So we did a lot of really different things that were phenomenal. And again, it's the most fit I've ever been in my life. So yeah, so there was always someone overseeing, but those last 2 years, we had a GA.
Yeah, and Jackie brings up two really good words. You know, trying to change the word big to strong, and then skinny to lean. So she, you know, describes being strong and lean, and that's something culture-wise that we're hoping to continue to see a difference in the athletic world, because being big is not something maybe a woman wants to be told, like, wow, you look so big, and trying to reframe just whether, no matter who you're talking to, why does it strong fit as a good word to describe an athlete? Why doesn't lean fit as a good word to describe an athlete? It doesn't need to be gender specific. Julie, what about your experience in the strength and conditioning room?
Yeah, so I'll share how I made Ashley laugh last week. On the women's soccer team, we had in-season jeans and we had out-of-season jeans. So out of season, we were lifting and we were getting big. I think this speaks to sort of the evolution of training, strength training, right? I think even, you know, Ashley had mentioned I've run 6 marathons. I've been training so different from when I started doing it in 2010 to now. It's just so different. So I think that's probably a part of it, right? I think a part of it too is that the head trainers were also focused on hockey and football, right? So it was a lighter lift to just take from some of those trainings, likely, rather than get sports specific. Jackie made a good point, though. The GAs were intentional in creating plans for women's soccer as well, and studied. They were, you know, obviously in school and learning and doing their own research. So that was really great. Junior, senior year, we had a great GA as well to help lead there. But yeah, the in-season and out-of-season jeans were the big joke amongst the team. And we had some injuries while lifting. I recall a time when one of my teammates stood up and said, "This is unnatural," and walked out. You know, that was her way of saying, like, "Hey, I'm not doing this. It's actually hurting more than it's helping me right now," which I thought was awesome to see.
Yeah, I obviously didn't go to UNH, but just as a former woman athlete, I had 4 strength coaches in my 4 years, and the 3 that I had for sophomore, junior, and senior year, they were first years, and they wanted to go somewhere. You know, my senior year person is now with the Atlanta Hawks. And you can see those younger grad assistants, you know, they're looking at the new science. They come to your practice or come to a game of yours and really see what is demanded of your body and try to understand it, I think, a little bit more. So that's something that comes to mind in terms of the correlation maybe between like a grad assistant working with a team and how that could be a benefit. You know, I will say, going back to Nicole's statement of the mastery versus ego, I was very wanting to compare myself to my teammates. And my head coach actually said to me that if he was still the one in charge of recruiting, he would have never recruited me because I am way too skinny. And so I guess good thing he wasn't the one that recruited me. His assistant coach did, because even in my whole 4 years, you know, all the lifting that we did, I didn't magically change. My body type still was pretty much the same. So thank you guys for commenting on that. And I think my last question specifically about your time at UNH, and then we'll kind of move on to life after UNH and advice, and then just some miscellaneous questions. But we did do your favorite experience. So we got to talk about maybe your least favorite experience. Nicole, what maybe experience could you share to help us better ourselves for the future?
I had a hard time as a walk-on hearing some scholarship athletes complain. And I felt grateful for, you know, every meal I was given and every pair of grips I didn't have to buy. Those were $40 a pop. I didn't have to buy those. And I felt grateful my parents didn't have to pay for gymnastics anymore. And I really hated sometimes hearing scholarship athletes complain about things that I felt so grateful for. You know, I remember being on this amazing spring break trip in Florida. We're competing in Gainesville. There's palm trees inside the gym. I mean, it was like heaven. It was a dream. We're staying in a nice hotel. We get some sun time, you know. And I remember I had a few teammates, fortunately not a lot of them, but I remember a few like complaining because we had to practice. And I felt like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? How many people in the world get to go on this amazing trip to compete in a sport that they love in a gym with palm trees growing in the gym, and you're complaining? Like, I really, really had a hard time with that. And, you know, today, sometimes we hear a lot of debate about whether some student athletes are being exploited and whether they should get a cut in the revenue that they, you know, in money sports and in the revenue that they generate. And, you know, I think there's some validity to those conversations, but I do think that there are a lot of athletes out there who have a little bit of a sense of entitlement, and they party too much. They're a little bit burnt out, yet their scholarships are renewed every year. And, you know, I found that very hard, and I feel very grateful. I did end up earning a scholarship, and I'm grateful that Gail and Ed recognized how hard I worked. But as a walk-on who was very dedicated and didn't party and did everything right, and then seeing people, you know, on scholarship, I just found that very difficult. And I definitely empathize for walk-ons who work their butts off and face similar frustrations. And I also empathize with some coaches who work with athletes who don't hold up their end of the deal, so to speak.
Yeah, Jackie and I have both coached at Division III, so you know, I would at least say being at a school with a team that has scholarships are not an option. It's very interesting to see the work ethic, the enjoyment, the amount of time. You know, that is something that I do think is different when you do take away the scholarship conversation. Let's go to Jackie. Do you have a least favorite experience by chance?
I don't think there's like one specific thing that comes to mind. I would say there is an overall struggle with resources just for the whole track program that was really tough for our athletes and us as a team to take. You know, we weren't issued clothes. We didn't ever have anything. And that was really tough when you go into the weight room and you get thrown out for not wearing UNH, you know, regulation stuff. You don't have any, so you have to go. I remember, I still have it, my t-shirt from Hayden Sports that all freshmen get on the first day of school. I got kicked out, so I went to the locker room and on a Sharpie wrote track and field on it so I could wear it in the weight room. I still have that shirt. You know, we never got shoes, but honestly, it was really more just the clothes. Or, you know, times were tough shifting around with other teams, especially indoors and getting moved around a lot. Or, so that I think, and those were the things that people complained about the most, are just kind of little things like that. So when I did come back to coach, I knew how important that still was to the student athletes. And I knew how much we could fix and put people at ease if we took care of some of those things. So, you know, for the time that I was there, working really hard with the equipment room to make sure everybody had a t-shirt, making sure all the women had shorts, making sure everybody got a pair of shoes, just so we looked like everybody else that was in the athletic department. Because we bought everything else we bought on our own. And I set that up too. I made it easy for them to buy their own things. But it was a struggle to just, you know, you just know that you're getting a lot less than all the other sports. And you feel treated that way sometimes too. And I think that was a big overall struggle for our program in my time there.
Julie, do you have maybe an experience or maybe along kind of the lines it seems like with Nicole and Jackie? It's not maybe a specific experience, but just something that was maybe a little bit challenging or hard.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of one personally, and let me start by saying too, like my favorite experience, I know I said on the road, but also walking in to the athletic facility and being greeted by the administration and Mama Jean. And I see Neil is on the call right now. It is just, it's amazing, the community and the support group you have when you walk in to the field house. So let me start by saying that, and then I'm going to share a personal experience that I went through. I was grappling with whether or not I identified as LGBTQ in college, and I wasn't comfortable, and I wasn't out. I was out in this small little knit community that I trusted. And that's with having a female coach who was out and had kids while I was there. And I knew the door was wide open to have that conversation, but it was a personal challenge at that point in my life. And again, felt super connected and supported in this small community. But it was something, you know, like growing up in New Hampshire, having gone to a boarding school, with then coming to UNH with a bunch of those hockey guys and them not wanting to know like what I'm going through. So I kind of wanted to stay safe until I figured out what I was doing with me and who I was. So I was going through that personal experience of, you know, who am I, how do I identify? And I will share with you that there are key members of the athletic community who are still there today in leadership positions and in the administration that helped me overcome that.
And I'm actually going to immediately have you answer the next question. When you decided to come out in your professional career and what that experience was like, and you know, the decisions to maybe come out in one job versus another.
Yeah. So I took an untraditional path right after graduating college. I went back to the boarding school that I had attended actually with Coach Amanda Bose, who's on the call today. We both went to GDA together. So I went back there, worked there for a year, devoted my life 24/7 to that boarding school. And I'm like, oh, gosh, I'm too young to be doing this. I've got to go figure out what else is out there. And I went into investment banking. So on Wall Street, really male-dominated industry, still is today. The industry that I'm now in also is tech. And it was uncomfortable. You know, if like you're not wearing your khaki-colored pants and your, you know, black Patagonia vest, like you weren't in the crew. And it was not the place for me. I didn't feel comfortable. I was essentially lying by omission, not talking about weekends, not talking about who I was spending time with. But again, like there's this for me balance of how much of it was personal that I needed to overcome versus how much of it was the culture of that team that I was on. I can assure you the culture of that team I was on in investment banking was poor, and a scary place at that point in time. But I had made a decision for myself to say, like, I'm too old to be doing this. And it's actually funny. One of my professors at UNH, an English professor, had come into class one day. She was dealing with health issues. And I'll never forget this. She said, I can't lie by omission anymore. And I'm not afraid to hold my partner's hand in public anymore because I don't have that long to live. And that kept playing over and over in my head when I was taking this next career leap at Amazon. Albeit Amazon, you can walk in with any colored hair, any like socks and Birkenstocks and cargo shorts, and nobody's going to bat an eye. Like, we have some of the most creative people working at the company. So that probably was partially it. But for that point in my life, I had my professor playing in my head, you know, I don't have that much longer to live. And I haven't looked back since. And now, as a people manager, as a member of the leadership team within AWS, it's something that my door will always be open for.
Great. Nicole, I wanted you to share a little bit about the Gail and Ed relationship and some of your takeaways of that dynamic and things that you learned. I know Gail keeping her last name is one thing for sure. So why don't you talk about them and their relationship?
Yeah, again, I think that they just had a really good separation of duties. You know, they both had their strengths. You know, they even coached different events. You know, but they had a really nice division of duties, and I'm sure it took some time to work through that. But when I was there, they just had their roles. You know, Gail, we finished the meet. Gail would do her thing with the media, and you know, it doesn't matter what, they had a nice separation of roles. And I think that helped their relationship get on well. It also helped us know who to approach about what things. I think that, again, Gail was a really good, strong role model, and I took from her a lot personally. You know, I had interest in sports psych. She had interest in sports psych, and I went on to exercise physiology, but she had her PhD. I wanted to get my PhD. She was just a strong role model in every regard. She kept her last name, which was something I felt very strongly about. I was married and an amicable split, but I'm not now, and I'm glad I kept my name. And you know, I don't want to get started right now on, you know, I feel very passionately about gender equity in many regards, and things like that don't make sense to me, why everyone in the world automatically takes another person's identity. I don't know how that makes y'all feel, but I just think it's wrong. I mean, my name is Nicole Mullins. Mullins, that's my name. That's who I am. I just never felt right about taking somebody else's name. And I liked that she kept her own name. And I just, again, I think they're great role models. And again, I credit Ed for not having such, his ego is very much in check, but you know, it also just shows that you can feel proud of what you do just because it has the label assistant. You do the best damn job you can do at that job and take pride in it. And I mean, I think I learned lessons from them both.
Great. Jackie, you became a head coach at the age of 24 after being only at Merrimack for 3 months. But before that, while you were getting your master's at Ithaca, you had a female mentor there, Jen. Could you kind of tell us how Jen maybe prepared you to get thrown into a head coaching role so quickly postgraduate?
Yeah, so I actually chose Ithaca College for grad school because I actually came out of UNH so well prepared with my undergrad degree that there wasn't a lot I could do. I would have to have gone into research, and I didn't want to do that because I wanted to coach. So Ithaca had an opportunity for me to be a GA and actually to coach. So I went there, and Jen Potter is the head coach there. And she taught me everything about the inner workings of how to run a track program. I worked on every little part of that program, saw how incredible she is at fundraising, how seriously she would take home meets, and all the little things that she would do for the team and for the athletes. She is incredibly organized. She's incredibly thoughtful. She puts a lot of work in everything that she does, every little detail. So I came out of there knowing that if I did 25% of what I just learned, people were going to think it was a lot. And I kind of still operate that way, honestly. She puts a lot of time and effort into everything she does. And she gave me a coaching role when I got there that, they needed someone to coach javelin, and okay, I did the heptathlon, so I threw the javelin sometimes, but they gave me a freshman who ended up going to NCAAs, and I was supposed to work with her and figure that out, and she let me figure it out. She let me figure out how I wanted to do it. She didn't micromanage the way that I coached. She just let me do my thing. But I also watched how she coached and how she set everything up and how she would write practice plans. And, I had to get a practice plan into her every week, and she never criticized anything, but it's something that I had to do. It's something that I had to show her that I thought about, what I was going to do, what the plan was. She would just do such special things for them. Like if for their conference championship, if you got to go, she would buy everybody a special sweatshirt. And I had to, tie that and put it with a bow with an inspirational quote that was laminated and a keychain and present it to each girl as she got on the bus. And it was just like, it was a whole thing. And at the time it could get really annoying because that's a lot of work. But it built a huge team culture. Like it built such dedication. It built such a hardworking mentality, and they were so grateful for everything they had. So again, I learned all the inner workings of a program kind of through her. And then when it was my turn, shortly after leaving there to be a head coach, I at least knew all the pieces and everything that I had to cover because I watched how it was done, and I got to have a hand in all of that, which was really important.
Yeah. So Jackie, talking about the organization side, and Nicole, you even mentioned the separation of duties between Ed and Gail. That's something that we talked about last week a little bit, about when you do have multiple genders in a coaching staff, or maybe it's the same gender, but that defined roles and organization and how powerful that can be so that you look like a united team. And, try to eliminate even the difference between a head coach and assistant coach, like get rid of the titles, get rid of the genders, get rid of all of that. And I think that both of you guys pointing that out, I think is something good for all of us to take away, even if you're not involved in athletics, just looking united. And, Julie even said that's powerful in what she does for work. So I do have a quick question, Jackie, because you and I both have coached men's athletes. Mm-hmm. What is it like being a female coaching young men?
It's a lot easier than coaching women. I actually just talked about this with my new boss here. And he brought up a really good point. He said, everybody wants to hire a female coach to coach the women, when in reality, you're hiring her and she's going to be needed more by the men. And I do agree with that. As a coach, it's way easier to coach men than women personally. And I think probably most women feel that way who do coach men. Another analogy, they're happy. They want to be there. They're ready to listen. They're ready to work. They don't, have too much to think about or have too much criticism. They're there to work. They're there to have fun. And that's been really good. And that was really, probably one of my greatest pleasures coaching at UNH was pulling up that sprints, jumps, hurdles, multis group that I worked with, pulling them up, setting really high expectations for them, and kind of getting them together as a group was really, you know, one of the best things for me there as a coach, and still being close with those guys to this day. So I absolutely love coaching the men. I have a way easier time with it. It's frustrating for me because a lot of the school records that I coached at UNH that I got for the program, and you know, even the ones that I'm getting now are on the men's side, and I got to figure that out and get it together, and get more women to break records too. But I think there's something about the dynamic. You know, I think that's something that people don't talk about. You know, a lot of the time is obviously there is emotion in sport. And I think sometimes when it's male to male, it's never comfortable to kind of talk about who someone is as a person. And being able to coach men, you know, this stuff, you know, the conversations that I've had, and the things that you learn, and you try to know that athlete as a person to help them get better. That isn't something that's always so easy to do male to male, but it's super easy to do, you know, female to male, because it's like, you know, you're talking to your older sister, you know, about whatever's going on, or, you know, you know, that's probably one of the most rewarding things for me is helping people kind of get better in that way, and helping them understand, you know, just my coaching style is, you know, it's important that I know the person, and the better I know the person, the more trust and respect we can build. And then when it gets to the point where I ask you to do something difficult in order for you to be better, you know, kind of the place where I'm coming from because of the relationship that we built. And that's kind of what I recruit on. And that's kind of the way that I run a program. And for whatever reason, that's way easier to do coaching the men.
Yeah. And, you know, recruiting that way and then following through with it for the next 4 or 5 years, I think sometimes a lot of coaches get lost in that, but I agree 100%. I was very nervous to come to UNH because it was the first time I was going to coach women collegiately. I was only coaching men's at the previous institutions I was a part of. And I agree. I can't fully pinpoint maybe exactly why, but I think the depth of my conversations that I have been able to have with my former male athletes versus females is completely different. There is that comfortability. I also feel a little bit more relaxed and looser. I think coaching a men's sport, I don't feel like there's as much of a magnifying glass. I am very, very conscious and timid coaching a women's sport. I just feel like women's sports always are being focused on a little bit more, which is, you know, I think funny because at Rhode Island, my sports administrator was a male, my head coach was a male, my assistant coach was a male, and between the three of them, they caused more drama than the team ever did in my 4 years. So, you know, that's something that was always my best way of describing it. If people wanted to just ask me, I'm like, that's probably the easiest way to say it. Like, I expected so much drama. You know, you've got type A personalities, all these people. And I think that's something big at Division I, which maybe will be a conversation for the future. But all of these athletes that showed up here at UNH, they were all probably the best at their school. And then bringing them all together, they all can't continue to be the best, and they all can't continue to be leaders. And meshing that dynamic, I think, is one of the hardest things to do as a coach. And if you don't recruit that mindfully of what kind of personalities you're bringing onto the team, that can get very challenging. Let's go to Nikki here. I want to talk about empowerment. I know that you're super passionate about this. This was one of our big important things we wanted to discuss. So what does women's empowerment mean to you, and what could you share on that?
Oh boy, you're gonna have to give me the hook here. For me, gender equity or fighting for equity means getting more people to become more aware of the many things that they see, hear, say, and do that are sexist, that they don't even recognize as sexist because they're so common. I mean, we see it's easy to recognize a huge wage gap, and it's easy to recognize some very visible gaffe, like we saw this past month with the NCAA weight rooms. And those things are so easy to see because they're just blatant and they're hostile. But where's the uproar every single day that you open the sports section of a newspaper and there are 15 articles on men for every one of women? Where is the uproar every day when you turn on ESPN and can sit there for 3 hours and never hear mention of a female athlete? Where's the uproar about sports schedules nationwide where men often get the prime time competition times and the training schedules? I mean, you can look at everybody's sports schedule and see men get 7 p.m. basketball slot and women get 5 when people are still at work or on the road. And how many people pay attention to the fact that men, your famous male athletes are called by their last name? You know, we've got Gretzky and Brady and Curry and Mickelson, and then that's a sign of respect. And women, how are they recognized? It's Billie Jean and Mary Lou and Venus and Serena and Danica and Steffi, and everybody's called by their first name, which is something that you do to an inferior. There's a whole thing about that. It's called the hierarchy of naming. I mean, we need to recognize those things, and then women need to speak up when they see the little things. Again, it's the little things that all together amass to the giant things. Women need to speak up about the little things, and they have to stop apologizing for speaking up. You know, when we hear these trivializing comments, whether they're made you know, off the cuff or to a person directly, you know, I don't care, get so tired of hearing, hike up your skirt, go to the ladies' tee, you throw like a girl, don't get knickers in a twist. I know these sound like little silly things, but they just take away from the whole fun and enjoyment of sport. And I think that not only is there discrepant media coverage, the discrepancies are tremendous. I can show you 100 articles for the last 3 decades documenting how discrepant media coverage is. But aside from that, there's, you know, people say that women's sports aren't as exciting to watch on TV. And you got to think about why. I mean, think about the way that commentators talk about women's sports sometimes. It's this such bland Cinderella fairy tale story. I don't want to listen to it either, you know, and you can talk about a rock and make it sound like a meteor, or you can talk about a meteor and make it sound like a grain of sand. And we need to hear more people talk about the amazing things that women do with the awe and, you know, excitement that they talk about men's sports. And I'll stop in a second. But, you know, the other thing is, how often when you're starting to watch how often have you been watching a match on Wimbledon or the US Open or some Olympic sport, and this exciting match is developing, and all of a sudden we cut to the men. And you lose any buildup that you could have. And it's these little things that really undermine, you know, bringing women up and making it be really exciting. The last thing is the talk about looks. Every time you hear a commentator talk about a women athlete, that all of a sudden it's about the outfit they're wearing or their hair or their nails. And women, we can do something about that, because if you're a female athlete and the interviewer starts talking to you about your outfit, bring it back to sport. I want to talk about my training and strategy and how hard I work to be here. I don't want to talk about my outfit. And women contribute to that too, but I'll stop.
No, that's great.
It's a sore spot for me.
No, it's awesome. Look, Julie's clapping for you. So, and Julie, you know, when you think of women's empowerment, you know, what do you think of? And, you know, whether that's related to your athletic experience or just life.
Yeah, at Amazon, we have this thing, simply when we agree with somebody, we respond +1. So I'm +1ing Nicole. I'll also say too that it's really important that women are not the only ones addressing these simple things. We need allies. Just as LGBTQ members need allies, we need allies. I saw two little ones here, Amanda and Neil's girls here. It's just as important, more important, that the dads are speaking up and addressing these really everyday simple things that we as a society have just accepted. And, you know, sharing just one snippet from work, I know we're at time here, I will get called out saying, like, you come back to this meeting and consistently say the same thing. And I just now say, yeah, I know, I'd rather it come from your mouth than my mouth. You actually have more power. One, you're a white male. Two, you're 2 levels above me. Those are the people that need to start speaking up every day in every simple phrase, motion, anything you see. So it's not just women who are doing it. Obviously, we're all fighting like hell, just as the women did before us. We're going to continue fighting. Change takes a really long time, and make those leaders. Ashley, you actually said something interesting before, that not everybody can be a leader when they come on the team. And not everybody's going to be a people manager or a leader in, you know, corporate world. However, leadership is defined differently. And I think it's defined by action. So no matter what your position is, if you're not a captain, if you're a center midi, no title, if you're an individual contributor working in a bank or a tech firm, a leader is standing up. And it's really important that we get those allies to stand up.
That's great. And I will mention too, we will be opening up for questions hopefully soon. But we will go at least till 7:30. The Black Alumni panel did go to 7:45, so we're not too crunched for time yet. We'll get there. So Jackie, women's empowerment, what does it mean to you? What comes to mind?
I guess what comes to mind for me is providing the opportunity. You know, back in March, I was sitting at my desk at UNH, coming up with workout plans in a pandemic. Yeah, right where that door is, actually. Just coming up with workouts, dealing with a pandemic, you know, minding my own business. And I got a phone call from Jen Potter at Ithaca saying, you know, she heard that Duke was getting a new head coach, and he was looking for an assistant jumps coach. And would it be all right if she gave him my number? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, you know, fat chance that guy's not going to call me. And he literally called me as soon as I hung up with her. And I wasn't ready for it. And I actually couldn't answer any of the questions that he asked and had to follow it up with an email. But I was, you know, that was the first time someone called me and had heard about what I had been doing and asked me to come, you know, step up, you know, kind of to the next level. And it's providing an opportunity like that when you can. So that's a middle-aged white man calling me, asking me, you know, if I want to come up to the Power 5. And that was, you know, it was something for me where I didn't think I was ready. Wasn't intending on leaving. I was, you know, happy doing what I was doing. And then at the same time, you're like, how could I not go? How could I not chase that opportunity? And I think it's important that we provide those opportunities where we can, when we can, is to just give someone the shot at being there. So, yeah, it's been, you know, it's huge. And I even think for them, I'm pretty sure I'm the first, you know, female coach of color, or the first person of color at all to work on the staff. So they knew they had to make a change too and step it up. So it's recognizing when you got to do something about it. And, you know, I hope I've been doing a good job. I think so far. So yeah, it's providing that, giving that chance to show what you have.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to make this kind of, you can take it one direction or another. Did you ever find yourself struggling to either find your voice in an instance that you think is important to share with those watching? Or do you recall a time where your assertiveness might have been mistaken as something else? Okay. One of those two things that trend in the women's world, at least in my personal experience. So Jackie, I'm actually going to make you start.
All right. What was so the second one was?
So the first, either did you find yourself struggling to find your voice, or have you ever recalled a time where your assertiveness might be mistaken as something else?
So the one about assertiveness is really easy. So when I was an athlete, I was at practice, I was very much about business. I was there to work out, go through practice as I was told, and to get out. Like, it was my job. I was not there to socialize. I was not there to smile. I was not there to, cheer everybody on and have a great time. I was there to work. And that really got misconstrued. And I was seen as a very scary person. I remember as an upperclassman, so I must have been a junior, and a freshman male thrower must have heard me talking about something someday, like outside of practice. And he goes, he's like, wow, you're so nice. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. He's like, but I really thought you were a jerk. Like, I really thought that if I said hi to you, you would just punch me in the face. And I said, that's like totally like not who I am as a person, but I'm very about the business, when I'm doing what's really important to me. And that got misconstrued as, I hate everybody and everything and don't want to talk to anybody. And I think that's really funny now, because I'm like completely different as a coach, completely different. I will talk to anybody about anything. I keep practices pretty light, keep it positive, smiling a lot, keeping everybody loose and calm. And that's kind of the way that I coach, but that's not the way that I was as an athlete at all. So yeah, definitely been misconstrued there. Actually a lot. That I've gotten that comment a lot. I guess I'm very serious when I'm doing something important. So
Nicole, do you want to take the assertiveness approach or the finding your voice approach?
I've always been pretty assertive. I think that I grew up in a little neighborhood with all little boys, and I was always going to be the toughest. And I think that helped me find my voice. But I don't know if I'm going to answer that. This is just something that comes to mind, and it might be off the track, but I remember, thinking about Gail and some of the sexism that she faced. She tells me 100 times that, when she's assertive, she'll get called choice words versus, if a man's assertive, it's just normal. And this is something that happened at YSU, where I teach now, and it's just a small little story. But I'm giving a final exam on Friday, 8 a.m. Friday morning of finals week. My students are taking a very, very difficult exam. And all of a sudden, they start doing construction in the lobby, like right outside the door. And there's jackhammering and there's beeping going on, and it's just impossible to concentrate. So I immediately go out and ask the foreman to stop what they're doing. I nicely ask them to stop what they're doing. And he basically said, I don't have to take any orders from you, which I thought was appalling, because it's finals week for students taking an exam. And he said that he only took instructions from the facility coordinator. So I promptly got on the phone right in front of him, called the facilities coordinator, who called him while I was standing there in front of him, told him to stop. I got a smug little smile, went back to class with the quiet. But the amazing thing was that I even had, and he muttered those choice names for me under his breath. And I earned that, moniker for standing up for my students. And it's just, I don't know if that's answering your question, but it's just an instance where assertiveness can, go awry where it shouldn't have to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Julie.
My job is to be assertive, like running a strategy and operations organization of over 200 people globally. I've been called names. I've had colleagues come and share what other colleagues have said. Quite frankly, now where I am with my age and in my career, I take that as a compliment. I will say, however, that I've become wiser in my career. I think I used to be more loud and present without that much intention earlier on. Now I'm very methodical and very intentional, and I take these roles rolling into the leader of the business for a reason. There is an inordinate amount of decision making that I have, the ability that I have to persuade and influence what the outcome is. And now I don't care if it's presented or marketed as my idea anymore, so long as I get the outcome I intended for. That's a personal choice. That's something that I decided that I was okay with a couple of years ago. I'm doing my part in driving change in a very intentional way. And I do have to be assertive. However, I'm also getting buy-in from certain people within the organization, bring them along with that decision. They might not like it. I've sought them out. I've heard their 2 cents, and now we're making a decision whether or not it's going to go that way that person intended, or if it's going to go in the way that I intended. So yeah, I'm just at a point where I obviously feel well protected and good in the position that I'm in. Had you been asking me this question 5-6 years ago, I'd probably have a very different answer. I am now in more of a position of power. So again, like being able to keep my door open and have empathy toward those individuals, women and underrepresented colleagues within the organization, it's super key to understand what's happening at that level, funnel it to leadership, and funnel it back to human resources. By the way, human resources after college, it's not human resources. It's likely going to be company resources, and you're going to have a lot on your shoulders as a business leader. You're going to need to be active in taking charge and matters into your own hands.
Wow. Yeah, that's good advice. Absolutely. When I think of the word assertiveness, I think I was often told as a kid, confrontation instead. Like, I don't think the word like, oh, you were being assertive, or in that instance, we saw assertiveness. Instead, it was like, as if I was seeking confrontation, and I actually despise confrontation. But, you know, I thought that was always very interesting, even coming from my parents, which I am adopted by my grandparents. So I always felt like the generational gap really made a lot of things hard at some points, at least in my mind, to feel relatable. Last question, and then we do already have a question from the group, but talk to me about body image, and maybe whether that involves eating disorders or maybe even mental health issues. So, you know, suicidal thoughts, troubled relationships, anything like that. It doesn't need to be a personal experience, but, you know, the odds are, how many teammates did we probably have in our time as a college athlete? Did you ever encounter that, and how do you feel, you know, your coaches either was able to handle your best support your teammates, and if there was a good amount of resources here at UNH to kind of help with that? Jackie, let's start with you.
All right. I personally, you know, didn't have issues with body image. I remember, you know, just for my event and in a conversation with my coaches, that being really strong suited me. And, you know, I took to that really well, and I took to lifting really well. And so my goal was, you know, to be as strong as possible. And that was the route that I was going to go. And I honestly thought the bigger and badder I looked, the bigger and badder I was going to be. And I loved everything about it. And I wore the speed suit with it. And if I terrified everyone, then fantastic. I loved it. But but that was, that was me. That's just kind of who I was. But, being on the team, yeah, we had, teammates with eating disorders, come back over the summer, having lost, basically, all of their body weight, you can see bones and you can see everything, and trying to deal with that and help them along. And, athletes talking to coaches about people they were concerned about. And then actually coming back as a coach and dealing with, eating disorders as well. And I think our staff handles it incredibly well. For those types of issues and those types of conversations, and someone who's been in it for decades and has had those conversations for decades, Hop is a great resource for that. I've watched him turn around so many athletes and get them on the right track and get them going, and listening to the conversations he's had that have saved lives. And it's been so important. I think the points where it gets tough, again, going back to resources and kind of the lack of resources just for a track and field program. I think it's really hard to have a conversation about eating disorders and mental health with a member of like anyone in the department who doesn't actually know that person. I think that's really tough. Track and field doesn't get an athletic trainer at practice. We don't get water. We don't have someone there if you get hurt. There's no one around. And so it's tough to try to have that as your reality. And then when something major like an eating disorder happens, to be like, oh, well, you need to go see these people. And it's like, well, who? Like, these people never, have created a relationship before. And this is going to be like the first time is this thing. And I think it's really hard to build trust in that, just because there isn't a relationship there to begin with. And I think that's why, the track and field staff in itself is such a good resource for the track and field team, because these coaches have been here for decades. They've seen it all, and they know how to walk someone through it. And so, there's a lot of trust and respect for them in that, for sure. But again, it's hard to have anybody from the outside kind of step into that.
Yeah, I remember, it's interesting that you bring up even just the presence of having someone there, because my freshman year, I didn't feel very necessarily comfortable with my athletic trainer. It's not like I don't feel like she knew me or that I knew her. But I had a situation where I definitely was not comfortable to go to either male coaches, and I wasn't about to turn to my family yet. And I told her, and she came up with a reason to tell my coaches why I wasn't going to be participating in sports for the next 2 weeks. And that amount of trust that day, after being so severely scared and not knowing who to go to as an 18-year-old, that made a huge impact. But you bringing that up made me realize the only reason why I probably chose her is because I had to see her. And the fact that she did travel with us on all of these plane rides, and like just the hours ultimately added up enough for me to be like, well, I guess I'm going to pick her. So that's a very interesting point. Julie, anything specific about whether it's mental health related in terms of body image or, self-talk, and all of that?
Yeah, I'll share here that mental health has been a topic on the advisory board that I'm on for UNH. It's 100% a topic that is the number one priority. I think as a student, I had a different experience, a more positive experience than Jackie. We did have the support of athletic trainers. Thank God for our athletic trainers, and also that I could go to our coaches junior and senior year when I was in that captain position, because we did have I had mentioned it earlier in this meeting, we had some scary incidences where one teammate did try to commit suicide. And that was still talking about it today, is really hard. I don't use the word hard that much. That was hard. And the school was there for us. It was there for the entire team. It was there for that individual. That individual was nursed back into health by, the UNH staff. In terms of, we also had a number of eating disorders on the soccer team. Reflecting back on it, there was always this physical reintroduction that you had to go through in terms of, maintaining a certain weight. And I guess, by the way you looked, I don't know the specifics. However, I'm not sure if there was a mental gauge, right, on whether it was time or not to re-enter the locker room, to get back on the field. I have no idea what that looked like. It was always more about that physical test to make sure that you could get back out and compete.
Okay. Nicole, anything on those topics?
Well, this is challenging because, as an exercise physiologist, obviously I teach about food and exercise, and the both are incredibly important. I don't know how to answer this in a nutshell, but first of all, eating disorders are psychological issues. They're about, people with eating disorders are using food as a way to control some other problem. And I just think there needs to be a vast, much greater education on that. No coach's comment or unfortunate practice like a weigh-in or causes an eating disorder, but it can be something that contributes to tipping the scales or uniforms or whatever. And so I just think there needs to be a lot of education around that, but certainly everywhere. I'm not talking about UNH, I'm just talking about everywhere. Because eating disorders are the leading cause of mortality of a psychological disorder, early recognition is key. And that means anybody who recognizes some signs or symptoms got to get that individual to mental health counseling where they can do some real good. It's just a huge topic to talk about. In general, as far as coaching and performance, I think in this whole country, we have to have a greater recognition about sports are not about how you look, they're about what you can do. They're about what you can do. And again, there's a greater focus on how women look more than what they can do. And if you focus on what you can do, you often, as a side effect, take care of how you look. If you're training hard and you're doing what you should be for conditioning, probably your weight will get in better check, and it's much less threatening, way to approach things, for coaches to approach things, and to focus on a weight or appearance. So it's a huge topic to talk about, but those are a couple of cents there.
We'll need to plan another Zoom. Amanda, you have a question that you'd like to ask the panelists?
Sure. I just wanted to ask you guys, in terms of some maybe advice or thoughts or anything in terms of what you have had time to reflect on now, in regards to your experience as a student athlete that you kind of wish you had realized maybe a little bit sooner, whether in your professional career or sooner in your time as an athlete. I know as a coach, I certainly have things that I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I had been fitter as a student athlete, or things like that, that I try to impart on my students from time to time. But just curious if you guys have anything that pops to your mind that you wish you had maybe known a little bit sooner.
Yeah, that's a great question. Julie, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, that cereal was not in my favor for nutrition. So I guess overall, I wish I had more of a nutrition coach. I feel like my best, physical fit and shape came after college when I started running marathons. So that's definitely one. I wish I was smarter about that, or had proper education, or perhaps majored in a different area. I think too, like reflecting back, I wish I didn't care so much about playing time. And you probably heard it from me earlier on when I talk about the positive experiences. I'm not talking about specific games or goals that I scored or anything like that. Like when I reflect and think back of my time at UNH, it has helped build me into a leader that I want to be. It helps me collaborate with people. It taught me about community and what I'm passionate about, and what I want to do in that regard. It has no doubt like set me up for success in the corporate business world. So I wish I had spent less time probably focusing and complaining on playing time, and more time just enjoying that experience.
Nicole, what advice do you have, or something that you wish that you picked up on earlier?
I don't know if this goes here, but another thing that I found challenging at the time, aside from the scholarship athletes complaints, were I found it hard to be a non-drinker. And I don't mean that it was hard for me not to drink. When I was in college, I didn't want to have anything to do with alcohol. I had some relatives with problem drinking, and I hated it. And so I felt quite alone in that perspective at the time. And I think maybe we're better off now than we were then, but I felt like there were very few conversations around alcohol that didn't come from the perspective of drink less or watch your drinking, you know, or they were NCAA mandated talks about don't get in trouble, you know, and I never felt like, in my whole 4 years, I had very few teammates, one, who didn't drink. And, you know, I just felt like I was always the outsider in that regard. And I don't regret it for a second, because I totally dedicated to eating well and training well. And I had a great career, and I have no regrets, but I wish I had known that there were more people like me at the time.
Yeah, this is actually a quote from Nicole in my conversation last week. Gymnastics was my heaven. You know, for a lot of other people, partying was their heaven. So I think some people can relate on that call. I know I personally can. I chose to drink a lot later in life compared to my peers. Jackie, any advice or something you wish you maybe figured out sooner?
I think I'm in a unique perspective where I was a part of the team that I came back to coach, and I tried to do those things that I wanted to change then. And I think, you know, I think the important message is you have the power to do a lot of things. Your athletic career is in your hands, and you can make it what you want to make it. You have to be the one to do it. You know, whether that's, you know, it wasn't necessarily an issue of working harder at practice. But again, you know, not caring so much about the social stuff, you know, not caring so much about, you know, what my friends are doing outside of practice or outside of meets or what I'm missing, because you only get 4 years to do your sport. This is the last 4 years. The chances that you're going on after this are slim to none. And you want to make everything of it, because you're never going to be this way again. You're never going to have another chance like this. So really making the most of that. And then anything that you see that you don't like the way that it is, go do something about it. And I think that's part of what I did learn at UNH, just being a student athlete in that athletic department, spending a lot of time there, being a kinesiology major, is the things that I saw over time while I was there. By the time I was a senior, you know, I was trying to deal with those things head on. I knew who to talk to. I knew how to bring it up. I knew when to bring it up. You know, integrity is a huge thing to me. And I think I learned that at UNH, that how important that is to me, and that I'll do whatever I can do to make sure that, you know, that there's integrity, and that, you know, things are, you know, we're going at things in the right way with values and morals, and we're doing things on the up and up. And I learned that, you know, being a student athlete at UNH, is that I can have a part in that. You know, if there's something going on that I don't like, instead of, just complaining and waiting for somebody else to deal with it, go try to deal with it. Go try to fix that. And so I was lucky in that I had, some time when I came back to try to work on those things. And I hope I was able to have at least a slight impact on the program, while I was there for a couple of years. But yeah, you gotta go be the one to chase after your dreams. No one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, these stats are so outdated because it was when I was in college, but 1% of all high school athletes would become a Division I athlete. And of that 1%, 0.01 became professional athletes. So, to just give you a little perspective on that, I mean, Nicole and I even discussed, there isn't adult gymnastics really. Like, she wanted to decide when her career was over. She didn't want graduation to decide when her career was over. And that really stuck with me, hearing that and, embracing these 4 years, Jackie, like you mentioned. We do have a question in the chat. How has being a student athlete at UNH prepared you for your future? Jackie.
I think that kind of goes off, what I just said too, is, the things that I saw, the things that I experienced, the things that I loved, I kept with me. But I think a big thing that I learned was a big part of who I am is to leave it better than I found it. I always want the people that are coming up behind me to have it easier than I had it. And my teammates were a huge part of that at UNH. For whatever reason, from freshman year, I was always with the upperclassmen. They were my teammates. It was always juniors and seniors. It was always, kind of always skipped a year. And I spent a lot of time with the upperclassmen. They always took care of me, like, for good or bad, like, they would be like, if I was at a party, and I was underage, they made sure I had a beer, but at the same time, they were reprimanding the team about, being responsible and not doing any of that. They always took care of me. And that's something that I took with me when I was an upperclassman. I took care of, the ones that were behind me. If they had a problem or if they needed someone to talk to, in the role of the captain that I was that for them. I did everything I could to try to make it right. And I took care of them. And that's something that I've taken with me every job that I've had. I always try to make it better. Whatever it is, I take some time to see what's going on, to get the feel for how things are going, kind of read the room in whatever situation I'm in, and in time, start to change it, start to make it better. And, I've tried to do that everywhere I've gone. And I hope I've had an impact, a positive impact where I've gone. But I think, that's a huge thing that I learned at UNH, that, and, how important integrity is to me. And I'll do anything for it. I'll do anything to keep it. I'll do anything to have it. And that's a really important thing that I learned at UNH as a student athlete.
Awesome. Julie.
Yeah, another +1, and I'll add to it by saying being a student athlete at UNH teaches you early on how to deal with conflict. It teaches you how to receive feedback / criticism and also give it, which is really important no matter what career you're heading to after UNH or after you go and get your further degrees, whatever you want to do. I think at least had a saying on the women's soccer team, Wildcats do one more. And that's been a motto that's stayed with me throughout my career, making sure, I think that the word that Jackie used is perfect. Integrity. Doing things with a high degree of integrity and insisting on the highest standards, making sure that you're getting your full workout in, making sure that you're giving it 110%, and still figuring out how to work with a team of 22 other women, which seems crazy at times, right? No matter if it's figuring out how to share the bus and do your homework, whether it's figuring out how to share a room with all of us packed in on the road, you learn how to deal. You just do. And you learn how to get through conflict.
Nicole, being a student athlete at UNH, what did it prepare you for your future?
Well, if you ask 10 people what would be on their list, they would all say this. But I mean, I don't think there's one of the best life lessons that any student athlete gets is how to manage time, right? And how to manage time and with busy competition and practice schedules. And my life now is much like it was there. I mean, I teach at a university, so I'm, working around class schedules. And, I think a lot of us thought things would get easier when I got through undergrad, and then grad school, and then this presentation or this project. And, all of us who have, still have goals, it's always busy, right? It's always busy. And just learning how to maximize or optimize use of your time and never being anywhere without a book or whatever it is. I just ingrained those habits, and they certainly help me every day. But,
Great. I have one final question. And it's something that Murph and I mentioned on the podcast to preview this. And that is what we talked about. I can't help that I'm a woman. He can't help that he's a man. So we don't want necessarily all coaches that coach women's sports to become 100% women. But what would your advice be then for a man that is stepping into a coaching role with a women's program? So whether it doesn't matter title, right? Maybe even from an administrative standpoint, I don't really know, just trying to think about, any advice when you're working with a women's team to maybe be mindful of, if you do identify as a man. Julie.
Listen. Ask for feedback. How are trainings going? How's school? How's practice? Empathy. Empathy is huge. No matter if you're coaching women or men. I think we need more leaders, no matter what your title is, that have empathy in this world. And I really like Nicole's story about her coaches, that balance. It wasn't even a question of who has which head or associate title. That's the way it should be. That's it. That's a strong team right there, and a unified coaching unit. So I think it's somebody who's willing to listen, and somebody who can balance out, leadership with the rest of their staff.
And I can't help but think about Gail and Ed, and think about the fact that they are married. And so what their teamwork took to even decide to become a married couple and be married for so long. So I do think that gives them a little bit of an upper hand, right, in terms of probably working together. Although I do know many couples that say they would never work with their spouse. So I guess it all depends. But Nicole, any final words in terms of advice for a man dealing with a women's sport?
Yes, just to take it beyond sport, for men in general, with the whole gender equity in every regard. And I think it is empathy. I think it's switching the roles, getting men to appreciate. Imagine being in that position and how that would feel. You imagine winning the most important match of your entire life, and the first question you're asked is about your outfit. Or imagine watching 23 and a half hours of ESPN every day. Imagine having only one shower in your locker room. And there's, just imagine if that were you, how would it feel for you? And, something we didn't talk about, and we don't have time, but there's something called benevolent sexism. And that's where people are so helpful to women. They're overly helpful to women, and they do tasks for them. And so I would get men to say, what if I did that for you without your, you said you didn't need help and I helped you anyway. And I don't know if that's making sense here, but I just wish that we had more putting ourselves in the other shoes, more empathy that way. And also with that, imagine if it were your daughter. Maybe we can get some men to reflect on that. If your daughter was in this position, how would you feel about that? So more empathy.
Great. And Jackie.
I would say, I think kind of regardless of the coach's gender, I think just knowing just kind of how athletes treat coaching roles from my experience, having been a GA, a head coach, and an assistant coach, the head coach is always going to know that the athletes aren't going to tell them everything because you're the final say. The buck stops with you. So there are going to be things that you're not told because of that, because they want their playing time, because they want, you know, they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to let you down. They don't want, you know, to miss out on playing time or anything. You got to know that the assistant coach is going to be told a lot more because sometimes they're more of the friend, or they know that they're not the final say. They also know that the assistant coach talks to the head coach. So sometimes whatever they just told you is a buffer for what they need to really say to the head coach, but they need to talk it through first. Wow. And I think wherever, you know, you fall in that role, I think for any group of people working together, whether it's a coaching staff or what have you, you need both. You need men and women on that staff. Like I just said, it's way easier for me to coach the men. And there are times where it has been direly important that I was there for the women's team as well. Not in the same way, not from like X's and O's, like a coaching standpoint, but just from like, I need to tell you this, it's very important, like to my life kind of conversation, or something that you're not comfortable telling another male about just because you don't want to have that conversation. And it's something that takes 2 seconds to tell a female. It's important to have variety wherever you are. So if you're on a staff of all men and you're coaching women, it's not a great look. And not that there's anything wrong with the people. It's just, you got to know there's things that you're not going to know because they're not going to tell you everything. So the more people you have, the more people you can kind of pull into that circle, the better it's going to be. You know, so I think it's really less about, you know, kind of the genders in different coaching roles. It's more of, you guys got to know like how it's going to be for that role, just because of what that role is.
Yeah, that's great. I always think of, whenever I've been an assistant, you know, I have been a head coach as well, but I think of myself as like the fun aunt, right? Like it is so much easier being the fun aunt than it is being like the head honcho. You know, the way that kids, you know, young people, young adults use you when you are the assistant and come to you and talk to you, even about maybe something completely unimportant. You know, it's just so interesting. I definitely completely classified the titles differently. And I think you do bring up a good point about everyone being okay with that. And then that's where you have to trust too, that you're a good team as a staff, that, you know, the right things will come to your table. And you even brought up a really good point about maybe they know that you're going to tell the head coach anyways. So that little buffer and kind of feeling it out. We are dealing with young people at the end of the day. But
everybody wants to be a head coach, but they forget that the head coach is scary and people will cry and shake at just by looking at you because they think they're going to get cut. And like, that's a really weird spot to be in too, because it has nothing to do with who you are as a person sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, everybody wants to be the head coach, and then, you know, you kind of get put in a box sometimes of who you are and what's expected. And you know, so it's tough. And so there is kind of something to be said for that too, the role that you might fall in, you know, just by getting that title.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you so much. You know, shocker, I didn't get through all the questions, but great dialogue. And for those that attended tonight and that will end up watching, because this is recorded. And so for anyone that couldn't catch tonight, we will circle back, and Murph is going to close this out.
Well, I just want to give a quick shout out because Ashley gave the statistic before about how few women student athletes go on to professional sports. And it was a pretty big weekend here in March of 2021 for Women's History Month as 8 UNH alums were able to play in the NWHL bubble, and a bunch won the Isabel Cup, the Boston Pride, the team that won. So shout out to Jenna Rowe, McGarra McManus, Carly Turner, and Taylor Winskowski. They won the cup. The losing team had another Wildcat alum in Jonna Curtis. Also, the Toronto Six had Julie Allen, Connecticut Whale, Tori Halloran, and even though the Buffalo Buttes weren't there, shout out to MJ Pelletier and Coach Bill Bowes, who's been part of this meeting the entire time. So women's sports are getting there, that's for sure. Ashley, terrific job. Want to thank Julie, Jackie, and Nicole for being here. Excellent comments from all, and we really appreciate the time. And I think the final words from Julie were great. Forward, together, and blue. UNH alums forever. So thank you all.